If you're not willing to spend $14,000 just to watch my four kids for me, then don't even bother showing up. That shameless statement from my sister Carla wasn't just a bucket of cold water thrown in my face, it was the spark that burned away the very last shred of patience I had left for my family. After 6 grueling months of working myself to the brink of burnout, I had spent a huge amount of money to rent out an entire luxury wooden mountain villa for everyone. I imagined laughter, bonding, and a rare chance for us to reconnect. Instead, I was handed a so-called service schedule, assigning me the role of unpaid nanny from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every single day. Even worse, when I spoke up, my parents sided with Carla. They called my generosity a bribe, accusing me of trying to buy my way out of family responsibility. To them, my bank account was automatic, but my presence was simply a tool to be used. The moment my mother said, "If you don't agree, then maybe you should just stay home," a chilling calm washed over me. 39 hours before the flight was scheduled to depart, I quietly logged into the system and canceled everything from the business class plane tickets to the luxury vacation villa. The trip had originally been my idea, a special gift for the whole family, after years of everyone being consumed by work and personal struggles. I had booked every flight, every hotel, every detail of the itinerary without hesitation, sparing no expense to make sure everyone could truly relax. At the time, I had only one thought in mind. After everything we'd been through, my family deserved moments of joy together. From the moment I started planning until the day we were supposed to leave, I handled everything. I chose the best hotels, searched for the most convenient flights, and carefully arranged an itinerary that would suit both the adults and the kids. Every time I imagined the whole family laughing together, taking photos, and enjoying the vacation, I felt a rush of excitement. I truly believed this trip would bring us closer and erase the invisible distance that had grown between us over the years. But just a few days before departure, a phone call from my sister changed everything. Her voice wasn't cheerful or grateful like I had expected, it carried an edge of control and entitlement. She bluntly stated that throughout the trip, I would be fully responsible for watching all the kids so she and her husband could relax. It wasn't a request. It was a demand. Then she added a sentence that made my heart sink. If I didn't agree, I shouldn't expect to be part of the trip at all. I was speechless. All the time, money, and emotional energy I had invested suddenly felt meaningless. I began to realize that, in some people's eyes, I wasn't a valued member of the family. I was simply a free babysitter, always expected to sacrifice without question. In that moment, I understood that this seemingly perfect vacation was about to become the beginning of a confrontation I had never anticipated. After the call, I tried to calm myself down, hoping she had just spoken out of frustration. But that fragile hope was quickly crushed. Message after message followed. She listed out a series of duties I was expected to handle: watching the kids from morning until night, taking them out, feeding them, putting them to sleep, and even cleaning up after their messes. It was written like a job assignment, cold, precise, and completely devoid of gratitude. I texted back, telling her that I was joining the trip as a family member, not as hired childcare. I, too, wanted to rest and unwind after months of intense, exhausting work. But the response I received was nothing but irritation and blame. She accused me of being selfish, saying she worked hard raising her children and therefore deserved the break more than I did. Then she added that everyone in the family had already agreed to this arrangement. Her words left me speechless. I called my mother, hoping she would understand and stand by me. Instead, she sighed and told me to let it go for the sake of peace, reminding me that family means sacrifice. I reached out to a few other relatives, but most of them either avoided taking a side or advised me to give in to keep the harmony. With every call and every message, I felt myself being pushed further into a corner. I began to feel alone within my own family. The sense of being used and undervalued became impossible to ignore. Since when had helping become an unquestioned obligation? Since when had my sacrifices become something automatic, expected, assumed, and unappreciated? That night, I barely slept. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying all the times in the past when I had compromised, stayed silent, and gone along with things to avoid conflict. And for the first time, I asked myself a question I had never dared to consider before. If I bowed my head again this time, would I still be able to respect myself? The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely different. The confusion was gone. The hesitation had vanished. In its place was a calmness that almost frightened me. After an entire night of reflection, I realized I was simply exhausted, tired of always being the one who yielded. I had spent so much time trying to please everyone else that I had completely forgotten my own feelings and needs. I reopened the flight confirmation email and stared at the total amount I had paid for the entire family. It wasn't a small sum. It was money I had saved through months of relentless, exhausting work. I thought about every time I had stepped up to help, every time I had taken on responsibilities that weren't truly mine, and every moment when my efforts were treated as something automatic, expected, and barely acknowledged. The memories made my chest tighten, but they also brought an unexpected clarity. I picked up my phone, my hand slightly trembling as I logged into the booking management page. Just a few clicks, and the entire trip everyone was eagerly looking forward to would disappear. I paused for a few seconds, took a deep breath, and pressed cancel. The confirmation message appeared on the screen. In that instant, I knew I had made a decision that could permanently change my relationship with my family. My heart pounded, but not from fear, from relief. For the first time, I chose myself. For the first time, I said no to being controlled and taken for granted. I understood that arguments, accusations, and blame would surely follow, but at least I no longer felt small. I no longer felt invisible. Then my phone began to vibrate nonstop. Messages and calls flooded in one after another. I stared at the glowing screen in the quiet room and realized something. The real storm was only just beginning. If you were in my position, would you keep enduring in silence, or would you stand up for yourself? Comment 1 if you choose self-respect. Less than 10 minutes after I canceled the tickets, my phone started ringing nonstop. My sister's name flashed across the screen again and again. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. I hadn't even said a word when I heard her voice explode with anger. She accused me of being selfish and irresponsible, of ruining a plan the whole family had been looking forward to for months. Every sentence she threw at me felt heavy, as if she was determined to cast me as the villain. I tried to explain that I hadn't canceled the trip out of impulse. I did it because I refused to be treated like unpaid help. But she wouldn't listen. She said I owed her. She insisted that I had always been the one to sacrifice for the family, and this time should be no different. Her words tightened around my heart. To her, my sacrifices had never been a choice, they were an obligation. Before I could even steady myself, my mother called. Her voice carried worry mixed with disappointment. She said I had gone too far, that I had thrown the family into chaos and embarrassed everyone in front of our relatives. I listened in silence, a hollow feeling spreading through my chest. Even the person I had hoped would understand me most was not on my side. Call after call followed from aunts, uncles, relatives. All of them urged me to reconsider, to undo the cancellation, to apologize to my sister for the sake of family harmony. But the more I listened, the clearer one thing became. Not a single person asked how I felt. They only cared about salvaging the trip and restoring everyone else's comfort. When the final call ended, I sat quietly in my chair, my hands trembling slightly. For the first time, I truly understood what it meant to feel abandoned within my own family. And yet, in that very moment, I also knew something else with absolute certainty. I was not going back. The next morning, I picked up my phone again. More than 30 missed calls, dozens of unread messages. Every single one carried the same tone: blame, anger, disappointment, even harsh accusations. My sister said I had sabotaged the family's happiness. My mother called me selfish. A few relatives claimed I was overreacting, turning everything upside down over just babysitting. I read each message slowly, my chest aching, exhaustion settling deep in my bones. Not one person asked if I was okay. Not one person wondered how many times I had swallowed my feelings or agreed to things I didn't want. In that moment, I understood something clearly. When you make a habit of sacrificing, people begin to see it as your duty. And the moment you stop, you become the problem. I took a deep breath and began typing a message into the family group chat, choosing each word carefully. I told them I didn't hate anyone, I didn't want to hurt anyone. But I could no longer live with the constant feeling of being used. I deserved respect as an independent adult with the right to say no and the right to have my own life. If they truly loved me, they would try to understand that. After sending the message, I turned off my phone. A strange lightness spread through my chest. I knew that after today, things might never be the same. Relationships might shift. Some bonds might even break. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. For the first time, I chose myself instead of trying to please everyone else. I stepped out onto the balcony and let the morning sunlight warm my face. A soft breeze brushed past me, carrying a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. And I realized something quietly powerful. Learning to love and protect myself was only just beginning. Comment 1 to remind yourself of this. You are not alone. A few days later, the tension in my family slowly began to settle. The flood of calls stopped, replaced by a heavy, lingering silence. I didn't know what everyone was thinking, but I could clearly feel the invisible distance growing between us. Strangely, instead of anxiety, I felt calmer than before. Maybe once I accepted that I couldn't keep everyone happy, I finally had the space to listen to myself. I started investing more time in my work and personal interests. I signed up for a morning yoga class, learned to cook dishes I genuinely enjoyed, and picked up books I had abandoned long ago. Each small activity helped restore my energy and reminded me that my life doesn't revolve solely around family obligations. One afternoon, I unexpectedly received a message from my younger brother. He told me that after everyone had calmed down, some of them had begun to understand my decision. For the first time, my sister had to arrange childcare on her own, and that made her realize just how much she had depended on me. No one had apologized yet, but at least the silence no longer felt hostile. I smiled softly reading those words. I didn't expect an immediate transformation, nor did I need anyone to admit I was right. It was enough that they were starting to see I had limits, and that those limits deserved respect. That evening, I took a walk alone under the streetlights. A cool breeze brushed against my face, bringing a quiet sense of peace. I realized that happiness doesn't always come from pleasing others. Sometimes, it comes from having the courage to choose the harder path, the path of self-respect. And in that quiet stillness, I knew I was slowly building a new life. A life where I was no longer defined as the one who sacrifices, but as an independent person, valuable, worthy, and deserving of respect. After that turning point, I began to slow down. I no longer rushed to meet my family's expectations or tried to please everyone at once. Instead, I started making time to take care of myself, paying closer attention to my body and my emotions. I realized it had been far too long since I had truly cared about my own well-being. I built a habit of waking up early, brewing a cup of coffee, and sitting quietly by the window, watching the city come to life. Those simple moments helped me regain a sense of balance and inner peace. I also returned to hobbies I had once abandoned: painting, reading, taking long walks in the afternoon. Each small activity brought me genuine joy and a renewed sense of freedom. At the same time, I began expanding my social circle. I reconnected with old friends and met new people, listening to different stories and perspectives. Through those conversations, I realized I wasn't the only one who had ever felt trapped in heavy family dynamics. Sharing experiences eased my loneliness and taught me deeper empathy. Some evenings, I sat alone and wrote about everything I had been through. Writing helped me organize my thoughts, confront old wounds, and slowly transform pain into strength. I no longer blamed others, and I no longer blamed myself. I accepted that everything had happened as part of my growth. And in that quiet reflection, I recognized how much I had changed. I was no longer afraid of being judged. I was no longer haunted by the need to sacrifice myself to be loved. I began to believe that true happiness doesn't come from others' approval, it comes from living authentically, honoring your feelings, and respecting your own choices. A few weeks later, I received a call from my sister. Her voice was softer this time, no longer sharp or confrontational. She told me that after the trip was canceled, she had a lot of time to reflect. For the first time, She had to manage everything on her own, taking care of the kids, organizing her schedule, and it made her realize just how much she had relied on me. She apologized. The words were a little awkward, not perfectly formed, but to me, the fact that she chose to call it all was already a meaningful step forward. We talked for a long time, not to argue, but to truly listen. She admitted she had grown used to me always being available, to the point where she saw it as automatic. And for the first time, I openly shared how hurt and exhausted I had felt for years. That conversation didn't magically erase all misunderstandings, but it opened a new door. We agreed that from now on, any help would come from willingness and mutual respect, not obligation. No more commands, no more assumptions. After we hung up, I sat quietly for a while, feeling a deep sense of relief spread through me. I realized that setting boundaries doesn't destroy relationships, it gives them a chance to become healthier. The people who truly love you will learn to respect your limits. That evening, I stepped out onto the balcony and looked up at the calm night sky. A gentle breeze passed by, cool and comforting. I smiled, knowing I had come a long way from someone who constantly yielded to someone who dared to speak up for herself. And that was the most valuable change I had ever made. As time went on, my life gradually returned to its normal rhythm, but my mindset was completely different. I no longer lived in fear of disappointing others, nor did I allow myself to be pulled into heavy expectations. Instead, I learned to listen to myself, to honor my emotions, and to prioritize the things that genuinely bring me happiness. My relationship with my family gradually became more stable. We didn't talk much about the canceled trip anymore, but I could clearly sense the shift in the way they treated me. They began asking for my opinion, respecting my decisions, and no longer assuming that I would always be the one to sacrifice. Those small changes made me feel seen and appreciated in a way I hadn't before. I also learned to say no without drowning in guilt. I came to understand that refusing something doesn't make you selfish, it's a way of protecting your energy and personal boundaries. The more honest I was with myself, the more genuine and healthy my relationships became. One morning, as I woke up and saw sunlight streaming through the window, I found myself smiling. I knew I had stepped out of a painful chapter and into a more hopeful one. I was no longer the person standing quietly in the background, constantly giving and giving. I had become someone who actively chose the life she wanted to live. And if there is one message I would share with anyone who feels trapped in unfair relationships, it's this. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. You deserve to live a life aligned with your values. When you set boundaries, you're not losing love, you're learning how to love yourself more deeply. Sometimes, I sit alone in a quiet room and let old memories replay like a slow film. I no longer avoid them. The wounds that once left me breathless with pain have turned into powerful lessons, reminders of how strong I had to be to become the person I am today. I've come to understand that no family is perfect, and not every kind of love is expressed in the right way. Some people only know how to love the way they were taught, even if that way unintentionally hurts others. Realizing this has helped me let go of resentment and see things with more compassion. I've also learned to treasure simple, peaceful moments. An afternoon walk beneath rows of trees, a home-cooked dinner, an honest conversation with a friend. Those small things fill the empty spaces inside me and make life feel lighter and more meaningful. Gradually, I stopped obsessing over proving my worth. I no longer feel the need to be perfect in anyone else's eyes to deserve love. It's enough to live kindly with myself and with the world around me. Perhaps growing up isn't about becoming harder. Maybe it's about becoming gentler and more forgiving toward yourself. I don't know what the future holds, but I trust that I now have the strength to face it with a steady heart. And if you're reading this, I hope my story reminds you of one thing. You are not alone. No matter what your past looks like, you always have the right to begin again, to write the next chapter of your life the way you choose. Freely, fully, and peacefully. After everything, I choose to live more slowly and more deeply. I no longer let myself be swept away by comparisons or invisible expectations. Each passing day, I learn to appreciate